always wondered if I disappeared from this world, would anyone in my family even notice? Or would they just be briefly surprised before going back to doting on Audrey as if I had never existed? From a young age, I understood my place in the family. I was the quiet older sister, the one standing at the edge of family photos, the faint shadow next to Audrey. The golden child, the precious jewel of my parents. If Audrey was the radiant sun, then I was merely a dim moon, existing only in the moments when they momentarily stopped paying attention to her. When I turned 10, I was so excited thinking about my birthday gift. I had spent months subtly reminding my mom about the microscope I had been dreaming of, imagining myself discovering the wonders of the world through its tiny lenses. But when I opened my gift, my heart plummeted. A puffy, lace dress in bright pink, identical to the one Audrey had worn on her birthday last year. "But I don't like dresses," I stammered, trying to mask the disappointment in my voice. "Oh, don't be picky, Ellie," my mom dismissed with a wide smile. "You'll look just as adorable as Audrey." And just like that, I was forced to wear it the entire day, looking like a walking cake, while Audrey, beaming with joy, was lifted into my parents' arms, soaking in every bit of attention that, at the very least, should have been shared with me. But if that had been a one-time thing, maybe I wouldn't have felt so bitter. But it wasn't. It happened again. And again. Year after year. I excelled in school, topped my class, but my parents only cared about Audrey entering a dance competition. I won a statewide science fair, but they were too busy helping Audrey pick out a gown for her ballet recital. I don't remember how many times I tried to earn even a fraction of the pride they had for Audrey. But it seemed that, in their eyes, nothing I did could ever compare to her. My little sister only had to smile, and all attention instantly belonged to her. By the time I turned 18, I had accepted that I was just a supporting character in my own life. But when I received a full-ride scholarship to a prestigious university, I thought, this time, they'll be proud of me. They have to be. I walked into the living room, acceptance letter in hand, my heart pounding, as I held it up in front of my parents. "Mom, Dad, I got in. I received a full scholarship to Columbia University," I nearly shouted with excitement. My mom glanced at it briefly, then went back to flipping through her magazine. "That's nice, Ellie," she muttered absent-mindedly, before turning to Audrey, her eyes lighting up. "Sweetheart, you said you needed my help picking out a dress for prom, right? Let's go today." I froze, the letter in my hand suddenly feeling like a meaningless piece of paper. My father gave me a quick pat on the shoulder, never once looking away from Audrey. "Good job, kiddo, but you know, Audrey's prom is coming up. It's a big deal for her." I couldn't say anything. I just stood there, feeling a sharp bitterness rise in my throat. That was the moment I realized there would never be a day when I mattered more than Audrey in their eyes. But I was no longer a child, desperately seeking their approval. I was leaving this place. And this time, I wasn't looking back. I left home the moment I could. Just 1 week after my high school graduation, I packed my bags, bought a bus ticket, and headed straight to New York, where Columbia University awaited me. I never looked back. For the first time in my life, I could breathe freely. No more family dinners where all attention was on Audrey. No more comparisons. No more half-hearted nods when I shared my successes. Columbia was an entirely different world. Here intelligence was valued over looks. Here, no one cared if I was Audrey's older sister. I threw myself into my studies with an uncontrollable passion. The labs became my new home. I spent nights in the library, immersed in research on biochemistry and biomedical technology. I was no longer Audrey's shadow. I was Ellie Thompson, an exceptional student in the School of Applied Sciences. While I buried myself in books, Audrey stayed behind in our small town, attending a community college, not because she lacked options, but because she had never needed to try. To my parents, no matter what Audrey chose, it was always the right decision. I wasn't surprised when I heard that she partied more than she studied. 1 year passed. Then 2. I grew further and further from my family. The calls became infrequent and I didn't mind. I no longer sat by the phone hoping my parents would ask about my life. I no longer expected them to suddenly recognize my worth. I had learned to stop expecting love from those who had never valued me. By my 3rd year of college, I heard that Audrey was engaged to Daniel. A faint name in my memory. Some high school football guy who had no real plans for the future. I knew exactly the type of person he was. The kind who coasted through life on his looks, on luck, on the blind faith that the world would always roll out the red carpet beneath his feet. "Mom said you should be my maid of honor," Audrey giggled over the phone. Her tone was as light as ever, as if we had always been close, as if she hadn't spent a lifetime receiving everything while I got nothing. "I'm not sure I can make it, Audrey. I'm doing summer research." "Oh. But Mom said you should come, family is important." Family? I almost laughed. When had I ever truly been a part of this family? I didn't attend the wedding. When Mom called to scold me, I simply said, "I have more important things to do." For the first time, I felt relieved to say it. While Audrey got married and started the life my parents had always envisioned for her, I entered my senior year of college with a single, unwavering goal: to become a leading researcher in biomedical technology. I landed an internship at one of the top labs in Boston. I worked tirelessly, dedicating every spare moment to learning and honing my skills. By the time I was 26, I had earned my PhD and secured my dream job at a top research center. I was working with a team of scientists developing stem cell technology that could heal nerve damage. I had everything I had ever dreamed of: recognition, success, and a life where I was no longer compared to anyone. But no matter how far I had come, no matter how deeply I had entered a world Audrey could never reach, I could never fully escape my family. Because one day, they would come back for me. Not out of love, but because they needed me. I never imagined that buying a house could spark a family war. At 30, after years of hard work, I finally had enough money to buy a place of my own. It was a 3-bedroom house, with a small garden in the suburbs of Boston, not too far from the lab where I worked. To me, this wasn't just an investment. It was a symbol of my independence. I had built everything on my own. No help, no handouts. Every brick, every door in this house was a testament to years of relentless effort. I thought my parents would at least be a little proud. But I should have known better. "You bought a house?" My mother's voice crackled over the phone, thick with disbelief. "By yourself?" "Yes, Mom, by myself. I've been saving for years to afford it." "But you don't need such a big house. 3 bedrooms for one person, that's such a waste." I clenched my jaw, swallowing the disappointment rising in my throat. I should have expected this. A few weeks later, the next call came from Audrey. "Ellie, can you come over for dinner? Mom and Dad want to talk to you." Anytime my family said, "We need to talk," it was never a good sign. I arrived at my parents' house on Saturday night, feeling uneasy the moment I stepped inside. Audrey and her husband Daniel were already there. My mother sat with an expression of forced concern, while my father kept clearing his throat, like he was preparing for some kind of speech. "Ellie, Mom began, her voice too gentle, which only made me more wary. "Family always helps each other in times of need, right?" I crossed my arms. "What is this about?" Audrey exchanged a glance with Daniel before speaking. "You know our house is a bit small, right? The kids are growing and they need more space." I was beginning to understand. "So?" Mom smiled, a calculated, practiced smile. "We were thinking, instead of you living alone in such a big house, maybe you should consider letting Audrey and her family move in. Just a small adjustment, dear. You could find a nice, cozy apartment closer to work." I let out a dry laugh. "You mean, you want me to give Audrey my house?" "We're not saying you have to give it up," my father interjected. "Just share. You don't need that much space. You're still single while Audrey has 2 kids to take care of. No, I said immediately. Every eye in the room turned to me, as if I had just said something completely unacceptable. My mother shook her head, her face filled with disappointment. Ellie, don't be selfish. Audrey is your sister. She needs your help. No, I repeated, this time firmer. I worked hard to buy this house. This is my home. No one has the right to tell me to leave. Audrey's face twisted, as if I had just done something cruel. Are you really going to let my kids live in a cramped apartment while you have an entire house to yourself? I stared at her. How about you work and buy your own house, like I did? The tension in the room became so thick it could be cut with a knife. Daniel, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up. Ellie, don't you think you're being a little harsh? We're just trying to find a solution for the family. I let out a bitter laugh. A solution for the family? Or just a solution for Audrey? The room went dead silent. I stood up, suddenly feeling like I didn't belong here anymore. I've made myself clear. I'm not giving my house to anyone. Don't ever ask me again. I walked out before anyone could say another word. But it wasn't over. Not long after, I started receiving calls from distant relatives, people who had barely spoken to me before. Ellie, you need to reconsider. Family's important. You can't let your sister and her kids live in such a cramped place, can you? Some even went as far as to say, if you don't need all that space, at least consider donating your eggs. You're not using them anyway, right? I thought I couldn't be shocked anymore. But clearly, my family still had ways to surprise me in the worst ways possible. That was when I realized they never saw me as a person with my own life. To them, I was just a resource, whether it was my house or even my body. But I had spent my entire life living in Audrey's shadow, and I wasn't going to let them control me, ever, again. In the days following that tense family meeting, I thought it was over. I had said no and I expected them to understand I was serious. But I had underestimated their greed. It started with small signs around my house. Once, I came home late from work and found my back gate unlocked, even though I clearly remembered securing it before leaving. A few things seemed slightly out of place. Minor details that wouldn't normally be noticeable, but they made me wary. Then, on a Friday night, as I lay on the couch, exhausted and drifting off to sleep, I heard a soft clicking sound at the front door. A rattling noise, like someone trying to turn the lock. My eyes snapped open, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I quickly turned off the lights, moving silently toward the nearest window. When I peeked outside, my blood ran cold. Standing at my front door were my parents and Audrey. My father was fumbling with the lock, while Audrey stood beside him, clutching a cardboard box, as if she was already prepared to move in. Fury ignited in my chest like a wildfire. I took a deep breath, then threw the door open. What the hell do you think you're doing? My father jumped, dropping a set of old keys. Ones he must have stolen at some point. Audrey stammered, her face turning pale. Ellie, Mom thought you wouldn't be home. My mother said sweetly, her voice sickeningly fake. I crossed my arms, barely holding back my anger. And if I wasn't home, then what? You were just going to walk in and do what? No one answered. I locked eyes with Audrey, then glanced down at the box in her hands. What's in that? Audrey clutched the box tighter. Just some personal things. I mean, if you really don't need all that space, I thought I could start moving in. I let out a laugh, a bitter, humorless one. You seriously thought you could sneak in and take over my house while I wasn't here? My father straightened up, trying to appear calm. Ellie, you're overreacting. We just thought that if you saw the situation firsthand, you'd understand that you don't need to live alone in this house. Audrey and the kids could benefit from the extra space. I shook my head, unable to believe they actually thought this was reasonable. No. I said no, and I'm not changing my mind. My mother started losing patience. Ellie, you're being selfish. Families help each other. We already had a plan, you just needed to. A plan? I practically yelled. What plan? Wait until I go to work so you can break into my house and move in without my permission? The house fell into tense silence. I took a deep breath, then pulled out my phone right in front of them. You have two choices. 1, you leave right now. 2, I call the police. My parents looked shocked. They really didn't think I'd go that far. But when I started dialing, my father quickly raised his hands. Okay, we're leaving. Audrey's jaw dropped, completely stunned that our parents were giving up so easily. Dad, Mom, why are you— Leave, now, I commanded. They reluctantly left, but I knew this wasn't over. And I was right. 3 days later, I got an unexpected call from my Aunt Linda, my mother's younger sister. We hadn't spoken in years. Ellie, I heard what happened, she said, her tone serious. I need to meet with you immediately. I agreed, unsure of what to expect. But when I met Aunt Linda at a small cafe in downtown Boston, she revealed a secret that left me breathless. Your parents and Audrey are in serious financial trouble, Aunt Linda said, worry evident in her eyes. They've been recklessly spending for years. Your mother invested in a pyramid scheme and lost everything. And Daniel, Audrey's husband, has a massive gambling debt that she doesn't even know about. My heart clenched. How long have they known about this? I found out a year ago when your mother tried to borrow money from me, but I refused. I thought they'd figure out a way to handle it on their own. But now they've run out of options. I sat in stunned silence. My parents didn't actually care about Audrey and the kids the way they claimed. They just needed a safety net when their entire world collapsed. And they thought I would be the perfect solution. I clenched my fists. I had always known they never truly valued me, but I never imagined they would go this far to use me. Now I understood everything. And I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't going to let them drag me down with them. I couldn't let this slide. After learning the truth from Aunt Linda, I decided to confront my family, once and for all. I sent a group text to my parents and Audrey. I know everything, we need to talk, Sunday 6 p.m. at my house. No excuses. No one responded immediately. I guess they were panicking, trying to figure out how to control the situation. But one by one, the messages came in. Mom, Ellie, sweetheart, what's going on? Why so sudden? Dad, can't we just talk over the phone? Audrey, what exactly are you implying? I didn't reply to any of them. They had to show up. And they had to hear the truth. Sunday night, when I opened the door, all 3 of them were standing there. My mother had dressed up in one of her important occasion outfits, a clear sign she was still trying to maintain control. My father stood with his hands shoved in his pockets, staring at the ground. Audrey had her arms crossed, already on the defensive. I led them into the living room, but this time, I wasn't the passive Ellie they were used to. I looked straight at them, unblinking. We're going to be direct, I said, my voice firm. I know about the debt. I know Mom lost everything in a pyramid scheme. I know about Daniel's gambling addiction. I know the real reason you tried to take my house wasn't because Audrey needed space. It's because all of you are broke. My parents were stunned. Audrey looked around, as if hoping someone would step in to save her. Ellie, what nonsense are you talking about? My mother tried to laugh, but the unease in her eyes gave her away. Drop the act, I cut in. Aunt Linda told me everything, and I did my own research. It's all true. My father let out a deep sigh, sinking into the couch with his head in his hands. Audrey, on the other hand, shot up as if she had been burned. What are you trying to do, humiliate me? You think you're better than me? Better than you? I raised an eyebrow. No, but at least I didn't try to steal someone else's home just because I blew through all my money. My mother slammed her hand on the table. Ellie, don't be so selfish, we're family. Family helps each other. I let out a dry laugh. Family? When have I ever truly been part of this family? When have you ever cared about me unless it was convenient? Or am I just the financial backup you all think you can use whenever you please? No one answered. The final blow came unexpectedly. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, the front door swung open. Daniel walked in. "What's going on?" he asked, looking confused but slightly nervous. I turned to Audrey, then back to Daniel. A thought flashed through my mind. "Audrey, have you told Daniel yet?" She stiffened. "Told him what?" I smirked. "That I know about his gambling debt. And that he's also cheating on you?" The entire room froze. Daniel stood motionless. Audrey's face turned ghostly white. My parents' mouths hung open. "I hired someone to look into it," I continued, my voice as cold as steel. "Daniel, you're not just drowning in gambling debt, you've also been using Audrey's money to support someone else." You what?" Audrey stammered. Daniel bolted before anyone could react. Audrey broke down, screaming at my mother. "Mom! Did you know about this?" For the first time in her life, my mother had nothing to say. My father just sat there, shaking his head in silence. Their entire world collapsed right in front of me. 1 month later, my parents lost their home and were forced to move into a small rental apartment in a lower-income neighborhood. Audrey divorced Daniel, but thanks to his debts, she was struggling financially as well. No one to cling to. No one left to take advantage of. I received a short text from my mother. "We lost everything, are you happy now?" I stared at it in silence. And then I deleted it. No, I wasn't happy. But for the first time in my life, I was truly free. After cutting ties with my family, I thought I would feel regret, or at least emptiness. But instead, I felt relief. The kind of relief I had never known before. No more guilt-tripping phone calls, no more passive-aggressive messages about family obligations. I had closed that chapter of my life. And for the first time, I was free to build a future on my own terms. The only person I still considered family was Aunt Linda. After that chaotic family meeting, she called me. We met at a small cafe in Boston. "Ellie, I want you to know that you're not alone," she said, her eyes warm and kind. "I've seen how your mother treated you over the years. But you don't have to let them drag you down with them." I looked at her and felt something I had never received from my own parents. Genuine care. Not because she wanted something from me, not because I was a convenience, but because she truly wanted me to be happy. From that day on, Aunt Linda became the only family I acknowledged. We met regularly, took walks together, and cooked on weekends. She listened as I talked about work, my future plans, and the wounds I was trying to heal. One day as we sipped our coffee, she looked at me thoughtfully and said, "Ellie, you've spent too much time proving yourself to people who don't deserve it. It's time for you to live for yourself." And I decided to do just that. I started trying new things. Things I never thought I would do before. One day, while scrolling through social media, I came across a local hiking group looking for new members. I had never hiked before, but I wanted to try. That weekend I showed up at the meeting point. I felt a little out of place among the strangers, but there was also a hint of excitement. Something I hadn't felt in years. And that was when I met Ethan. Ethan was a nature photographer specializing in wildlife and landscapes. As I fumbled with my safety harness, he stepped over with a friendly smile. "First time?" he asked. I laughed. "Is it that obvious?" "Don't worry. Everyone has a first time. But trust me, once you reach the top, you'll want to do it again." I wasn't sure I believed him at the time, but when I stood at the edge of the summit, looking down at the vast forest stretching beneath me, I knew he was right. In the months that followed, I gradually opened up to Ethan. He wasn't like anyone I had ever met before. He didn't ask about my family, didn't pry into my past. Instead, he cared about me. The real me, not the version of myself I had spent years pretending to be. One evening as we sat by the campfire after a long hike, Ethan turned to me and said, "Ellie, you always seem to be on your own. Like you've never really belonged anywhere." I remained silent. He was right. But I think you deserve a place to belong, he continued, his voice gentle. And if you want, I hope that someday, that place could be with me. For the first time in years, I felt my heart truly warm. Not long after, Aunt Linda called me over to her house. She invited me to sit at the kitchen table, where she had already set out 2 cups of hot tea. Before I could ask what was going on, she slid an envelope toward me. "It's my estate," she said slowly. "I've updated my will." I froze. "Aunt Linda? What are you saying?" "I don't have children, Ellie, and I know you don't have anyone else but me," she said with a gentle smile. "I can't replace the family you never had. But I want to make sure that you'll always have support, even when I'm gone." A lump formed in my throat. Not because of the estate. Not because of the will. But because, for the first time in my life, someone had put me first. I squeezed her hand, my eyes brimming with tears. And I knew that finally I had found my real family. I once thought my life would always revolve around proving my worth to people who never truly saw me. But now, as I sit on my porch on a quiet autumn afternoon, I realize I was wrong. I don't have to prove anything to anyone anymore. I have succeeded. Not to please anyone else, but because I want to live life on my own terms. My work at the Biomedical Research Center continued to thrive. The stem cell technology project I was involved in was making significant progress. I once feared that one day I might lose my drive, but that never happened. On the contrary, I felt stronger than ever. But there was one difference. I no longer had only my work. On weekends, I spent time hiking with Ethan. Together, we explored trails I had never imagined conquering before. Standing atop a high cliff, looking down at the breathtaking landscape below, I knew I had finally escaped the shadows of my past. I was no longer little Ellie, the forgotten one, the girl deemed less important than Audrey. I was a strong, independent woman, proud of who I had become. One day, during a camping trip in Colorado, Ethan took me to a quiet spot by a lake. The water reflected the fiery hues of the sunset, creating a scene so perfect it felt surreal. "Ellie," he said, his voice deeper and more serious than usual. I turned to him, and my heart nearly stopped when I saw him kneeling down, a small box in his hand. "I always thought of myself as a wanderer, someone who could never truly belong anywhere," he said, his eyes filled with sincerity. "But then I met you. And I realized that what matters isn't where we stand, but who we stand with." I could hardly breathe. Will you walk the rest of this journey with me?" I laughed through the tears that spilled before I even realized I was crying. I didn't need to think. "Yes, I will." Ethan grinned, sliding the ring onto my finger before pulling me into a tight embrace. For the first time in my life, I felt like I truly belonged to someone. When I told Aunt Linda the news, she burst into tears. But they were tears of happiness. "Ellie, you deserve all of this," she said, squeezing my hand. I never doubted it for a second. Looking at her, I thought about everything I had been through. My old family, my parents, Audrey. They had once been my whole world. But they were no longer part of my life. And I didn't regret it. My wedding to Ethan took place on a lush green hill under a clear blue sky. Only the people who truly loved us were there. Aunt Linda, a few close friends, and colleagues I deeply respected. No parents? No Audrey. And I didn't feel like anything was missing. As Ethan held my hand and we exchanged vows, I knew I had found my true happiness. Not because someone finally acknowledged me. Not because I had pleased anyone. But because I had chosen myself. My story is not one of revenge or regret. It is a story of a girl who was once overlooked, once cast aside, once forced to fight to prove her worth. Who finally found her own value and a real family. A family not defined by blood, but by love and choice. I am no longer Ellie, the forgotten daughter. I am Ellie Thompson. A strong, happy, and free woman. and this is only the beginning of a life truly worth living. Ellie's story is a powerful reminder that family is not just about shared blood. It's about those who truly love and respect you. She spent her youth seeking validation from people who never valued her, only to realize that her worth was never dependent on their acceptance. Ellie dared to step out of her comfort zone, cut ties with toxic relationships, and found true happiness through her own choices. This story reminds us that sometimes, to find peace, we must learn to let go. What do you think about Ellie's journey? Have you ever faced a similar situation, or known someone who struggled to find their self-worth? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more meaningful stories about family and life.